In psychology, they say that one of the most paradoxical fears is the fear of closeness. People crave love, they dream of connection, they long for intimacy, but when it finally appears, something inside retreats. The very thing they want begins to feel dangerous. Affection feels suffocating. Trust feels risky, and the walls they built to protect themselves suddenly grow higher the closer someone tries to come. At first, it is hard to recognize. The person tells themselves, asterisk, I just need space. I'm not ready. They're not the right one. Asterisk, but beneath these reasons lies a deeper truth. Closeness awakens vulnerability, and vulnerability awakens old wounds. Every touch of intimacy presses against scars of betrayal, abandonment, rejection. The heart whispers, asterisk, if I open fully, I may lose everything again. Asterisk, so instead of leaning in, they pull away, sometimes gently, sometimes abruptly, often without even knowing why. Psychologists explain that fear of closeness is often rooted in early experiences. A child who grew up with inconsistent love learns that love is unpredictable. Sometimes it comforts, sometimes it hurts. A child who faces rejection or neglect begins to associate intimacy with danger because closeness once meant pain. These lessons do not vanish with age. They embed themselves deep in the nervous system. As adults, the body remembers, even when the mind insists it wants love. The result is a painful contradiction. On one hand, the person yearns for intimacy, the warmth of being understood, the security of being accepted. On the other, the moment intimacy arrives, defenses rise. They sabotage relationships, withdraw into silence, or push others away. They oscillate between longing and avoidance, trapped in a cycle where what they desire most is also what they fear most. In psychology, they say that fear of closeness is not the absence of love, but the shadow of past wounds. It is proof of how deeply we care and how deeply we were hurt. And until we face that shadow, the fear will always whisper, asterisk, stay safe. Stay distant. Don't let them in. Asterisk. In psychology, they say that fear of closeness rarely looks like fear at all. It does not always appear as panic or rejection. Often, it disguises itself as subtle behaviors that slowly chip away at connection. The person may look confident, independent, even charming. But beneath the surface, their every action is a negotiation between longing and fear. In romantic relationships, this fear shows itself most clearly. A partner may seem warm and open one day, distant the next. Texts go unanswered, plans are delayed, conversations avoided. The person says, I just need space, but what they really mean is, asterisk, I'm afraid to let you too close. Asterisk, they may start fights over trivial things, not because they want conflict, but because conflict creates distance. And distance feels safer than intimacy. Some even sabotage love by cheating, withdrawing, or leaving abruptly, believing deep down that it is better to ruin a relationship than to risk being abandoned again. In friendships, the pattern is softer, but still present. The person may be the friend who always listens but rarely shares, who knows everyone's secrets but guards their own. They keep conversations light, funny, or intellectual, avoiding the raw truth of how they actually feel. If a friend tries to get closer, asks personal questions, offers emotional support, the wall rises. Asterisk, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. Asterisk, the bond remains, but it is shallow, like water that never reaches the roots. Even in everyday conversations, fear of closeness can be felt. People avoid eye contact when the topic turns emotional. They laugh off compliments, deflect personal questions, or change the subject when vulnerability is near. They may prefer surface-level interactions, talking about weather, work, news, because the depth of intimacy feels like walking on unstable ground. To others, this looks like aloofness or indifference, but in truth, it is a silent shield. The workplace, too, is not immune. Colleagues who fear closeness keep professional masks on tightly. They avoid bonding outside of tasks, decline invitations, and maintain a careful distance. They prefer competence to connection, believing that being liked is dangerous, but being useful is safe. The office becomes another arena where walls protect them, even at the cost of belonging. Psychologists note that all these behaviors have one thing in common. They protect the self from vulnerability. Because closeness means exposure of flaws, of needs, of wounds, and exposure feels like danger. The irony, of course, is that the very behaviors designed to protect also isolate. The person ends up alone, not because no one cares, but because they never allowed anyone fully in. In psychology, they say that fear of closeness weaves itself into the fabric of daily life, so subtly that people rarely notice. It is not a refusal of love, but a survival strategy born of old pain. And until it is recognized for what it is, the person will keep repeating the same quiet dance, reaching out, pulling back, longing and fearing, forever circling intimacy without ever stepping inside. In psychology, they say that fear of closeness does not appear out of nowhere. It has roots, often stretching back into the earliest chapters of life. A child who grows up in an environment where love is inconsistent, conditional, or unsafe learns lessons about intimacy that follow them into adulthood. What the adult experiences as fear is, in truth, the body remembering what it was like when closeness meant pain. For some, the root lies in neglect. A child whose emotional needs were ignored learns that reaching out leads to disappointment. They carry into adulthood the silent script. Asterisk, don't need too much. Don't expect too much. Stay quiet. Asterisk, when a partner offers love, it awakens the old ache of being unseen, and instead of comfort, the closeness feels threatening. For others, the root is rejection. A child who risked showing their true feelings and was mocked, dismissed, or abandoned learns that vulnerability is dangerous. Later in life, each moment of intimacy awakens the same nervousness. Asterisk, if I show who I am, they will leave. Asterisk, so the adult hides behind masks, keeps conversations shallow, or distances themselves not out of disinterest but out of old fear. Trauma deepens a pattern. A betrayal in adolescence, a painful breakup, or an abusive relationship carves the association even deeper. Closeness equals hurt. The nervous system wires itself to anticipate loss the moment love appears. The adult may think, I want connection, but their body reacts with tension, withdrawal, or even panic. Psychologists call this implicit memory, the past encoded not in conscious thought, but in the body's responses. Even well-intentioned lessons from childhood can plant fear. Parents who said, asterisk, be strong. Don't cry. Don't depend on anyone. Asterisk may have meant to protect, but the message translated into adulthood as asterisk, needing love is weakness. Relying on others is dangerous. Asterisk, the result is an adult who feels shame for wanting closeness, as if intimacy itself were a flaw. What makes these roots powerful is that they remain hidden. The adult does not think, asterisk, I fear closeness because of my childhood. Asterisk, they think, asterisk, I'm just not ready. I'm just too independent. I just need more space. Asterisk, but beneath the surface, it is the echo of early experiences whispering. Asterisk, don't let them in. You'll be hurt again. Asterisk, in psychology, they say that fear of closeness is not proof of being broken, but proof of how deeply we have been shaped. It is the body's attempt to protect itself from repeating yesterday's wounds. The tragedy is that in trying to avoid past pain, we also avoid present love. In psychology, they say that fear of closeness drains people not only in moments of intimacy, but in the quiet spaces in between. What begins as a subtle hesitation grows into a constant inner conflict. The heart yearns for connection, but the body pulls away, leaving the person stranded between two worlds, longing and fear. This tension creates loneliness even within relationships. Couples sit together at the same table, but one partner feels unseen because the other cannot open the door to deeper closeness. They talk, they laugh, they share routines, but there's always a distance like glass between them. The partner who fears closeness often tells themselves, asterisk, I care, I want to be here. Asterisk, and they mean it. Yet every attempt to step further inward feels suffocating, as if love itself were pressing against an old bruise. Over time, this becomes exhausting. The push and pull dynamic, reaching out, withdrawing, apologizing, retreating again, creates cycles of tension. The partner begins to feel confused. Asterisk, do they love me or do they not? Asterisk, and the one with fear feels trapped. Asterisk, why can't I let myself be happy? Why does this closeness hurt when I want it so badly? Asterisk, this cycle often ends not because love is absent, but because the walls prove stronger than the longing. Psychologists note that the exhaustion is not only relational, but internal. The person lives in a state of hypervigilance, always scanning, always calculating how much to show, how much to hide. Intimacy feels like a risk that must be managed, not a gift that can be received. Over time, this erodes trust in oneself. Asterisk, maybe I'm not built for love. Maybe I'm broken. Asterisk, these beliefs only tighten the walls further. Even friendships and family bonds feel the strain. The person who fears closeness avoids calls, cancels plans, or keeps conversations superficial, then feels guilty afterward. They crave deeper bonds, but avoid them, creating the very isolation they most fear. This paradox leaves them tired, restless, and quietly ashamed. Spiritually, the cost is heavy. Fear of closeness robs life of its depth. Love, connection, and intimacy are not luxuries. They're the very fabric of meaning. Without them, the world feels hollow, even when it is full. The person may have success, comfort, achievements, but without allowing themselves to be truly seen, everything feels incomplete. In psychology, they say that fear of closeness does not just block relationships. It splits the self. One part longs for warmth, another part guards against it. And until these two parts are reconciled, the person will continue to live in quiet exile, surrounded by people, yet profoundly alone. In psychology, they say that when people cannot face closeness, they often build entire lifestyles designed to avoid it. On the surface, they may look ambitious, successful, or independent, but beneath those choices lies a quieter truth. Every distraction, every obsession, every mask is another way of saying, asterisk, don't look too closely, don't come too near. Asterisk, one of the most common escapes is work. Careers become not just a pursuit of success, but a shield against intimacy. The person throws themselves into long hours, constant projects, endless goals, convincing themselves that they are simply dedicated. But in reality, work becomes an excuse. Asterisk, I can't commit to love, I'm too busy. I can't open up, I have too much to do. Asterisk, professional achievement substitutes for personal closeness, but the emptiness lingers after the applause fades. Hobbies and passions can serve the same purpose. Someone may immerse themselves in sports, travel, art, or personal growth, but not always out of joy, sometimes out of avoidance. They keep moving, keep exploring, keep achieving, because stillness would mean facing the ache of vulnerability. What looks like enthusiasm is often escape, a way to silence the voice that longs for but fears connection. Another strategy is control. People who fear closeness often feel safe only when everything is predictable. They micromanage schedules, conversations, even relationships, ensuring no surprise can break their defenses. But control and intimacy cannot coexist. To love is to risk the unknown, and to risk the unknown is what they cannot bear. So they keep people at arm's length, trading spontaneity for safety, but finding that safety quickly turns into isolation. Some seek compensation in surface-level relationships. They may surround themselves with acquaintances, casual partners, or constant social activity, yet never allow true intimacy to form. The laughter is real, the company is genuine, but the connection never deepens. The crowd becomes camouflage, a way to avoid the terrifying silence of one-on-one closeness. Psychologists note that business itself can become an addiction. A calendar filled to the brim leaves no time for reflection, no space for love, no chance for vulnerability. The person insists, I just like to stay active, but the truth is simpler. Activity protects them from intimacy. The irony is that the more they avoid closeness, the more they crave it, and the more their distractions must grow to fill the hollow space. In psychology, they say that avoidance of closeness does not always look like fear. It often looks like success, adventure, independence, or busyness. But beneath the polished surface is a heart still hiding, still aching, still waiting for the day it feels safe enough to let someone truly in. In psychology, they say that the moment of awakening comes quietly. A person begins to notice patterns they can no longer ignore. The way they always pull back when someone gets too close, the excuses they invent to avoid deep conversations, the loneliness that lingers even in crowded rooms. What once felt like normal behavior starts to look like avoidance. And with that recognition, the first cracks appear in the walls they spent years building. Awareness is the first step, but it is also the hardest. To admit, I am afraid of love, feels like exposing the very vulnerability they've been running from. Yet psychologists remind us that naming a fear reduces its power. What was once a silent instinct becomes something that can be seen, studied, challenged. Awareness opens a door to choice. The next step is small acts of courage. A person who usually hides their feelings may try sharing just a little. Asterisk, I'm nervous. I don't know how to do this. Asterisk, someone who avoids physical affection may allow themselves to sit longer in a hug, noticing that the fear rises, but also noticing that nothing terrible happens. Another who keeps conversations shallow may take the risk of revealing a piece of their true self, watching carefully, bracing for rejection, and slowly learning that sometimes closeness brings safety, not harm. Psychologists explain that healing fear of closeness often requires what they call safe exposure. This means allowing intimacy in small doses, gradually teaching the nervous system that connection is not always danger. Trust is built moment by moment. A conversation that stays gentle, a secret that is held with care, a touch that brings comfort instead of pain. Each new experience rewires the brain's old lessons, creating a new truth. Asterisk, it is possible to be close and safe at the same time. Asterisk, of course, resistance remains. The inner critic warns. Asterisk, don't be naive. Don't open up, you'll regret it. Asterisk, but now, instead of obeying, the person learns a question. Asterisk, whose voice is this? Is it the past speaking, or the present? Asterisk, slowly, the authority of old wounds weakens. The person begins to separate yesterday's fear from today's reality. In psychology, they say that healing fear closeness is not about leaping into love without hesitation. It is about walking slowly into it, one step at a time. Each act of honesty, each moment of trust, each embrace held a little longer becomes evidence that intimacy is not the enemy. It is the medicine. And though the path is long, each step forward is a victory against the silence that once kept the heart alone. In psychology, they say that when a person begins to move through their fear of closeness, the transformation is profound. What once felt like suffocation begins to feel like safety. What once felt like danger begins to feel like home. Little by little, the walls that once protected now open into windows. And through those windows, life itself looks different. The most visible change appears in relationships. Love, which once felt fragile, becomes a place of rest. The partner no longer feels like a threat, but a companion. Someone who is not here to hurt, but to share. Conversations deepen. Arguments soften. Affection feels less like pressure and more like reassurance. Intimacy no longer carries the weight of yesterday's wounds. It carries the promise of today's presence. Friendships shift too. The person who once kept everything light and guarded begins to reveal more themselves. They share fears, dreams, truths they once buried. And instead of rejection, they find connection. Friends respond with warmth, not judgment. What once seemed impossible, that others could love them as they are, becomes reality. Each act of openness strengthens bonds until loneliness is replaced by belonging. Family ties heal in unexpected ways. A child who grew up hiding their needs may, as an adult, finally look a parent in the eye and say, asterisk, this is who I am. This is what I need. Asterisk, and in that moment, the weight of silence begins to lift. Even if the parent cannot fully change, the act of honesty transforms the dynamic. The person is no longer the silent child. They are the adult reclaiming their voice. Inside, the transformation is even greater. Fear of closeness always left a person split in two, one part longing, one part running. As the fear loosens, those two parts begin to reconcile. The heart learns that vulnerability is not weakness, but strength. The body learns that intimacy does not always lead to pain, but can bring comfort. The mind learns that not every story repeats, and the soul finally exhales. Psychologists note that closeness is not just about others. It is about the self. To allow intimacy is to say, asterisk, I am worthy of being seen. I am safe to be known. I do not have to hide anymore. Asterisk, that realization becomes a foundation for resilience. With it, rejection no longer destroys, because worth is not lost. With it, love no longer feels like a gamble, because love is no longer confused with wounds. In psychology, they say that when fear of closeness is faced, life stops being a careful performance and starts being a genuine connection. People stop living in exile from their own hearts. And in that return, they find not only others, they find themselves. In psychology, they say that closeness, once embraced, expands beyond relationships and becomes a way of living. When the fear loosens, intimacy is no longer confined to partners, friends, or family. It begins to color the way a person experiences the entire world. Life stops being something to guard against and becomes something to step into fully without disguise. The shift begins in the smallest of moments. A smile from a stranger is returned, not avoided. A simple conversation at the store feels genuine instead of mechanical. The person begins to notice that the more they allow themselves to be present, the more the world seems to soften in return. Walls that once kept love out also kept life out, and with their fall, existence itself feels warmer, safer, more alive. Work transforms too. Colleagues are no longer only competitors or task partners. They are human beings, each with stories and vulnerabilities of their own. Collaboration becomes richer when the person no longer hides behind performance, but brings authenticity to the table. They admit mistakes, share ideas openly, and find that trust creates stronger results than perfection ever did. Creativity blossoms. Where once the fear of judgment suffocated expression, now openness fuels it. Writing, art, music, or even daily problem-solving flow more naturally, because a person no longer censors themselves to fit invisible expectations. Closeness to others teaches closeness to self, and with that comes a courage to create without apology. Spirituality deepens as well. The universe, once seen as cold and indifferent, now feels like an intimate space. Instead of asking, asterisk, how do I protect myself from life? Asterisk, the person begins to ask, asterisk, how do I participate in it fully? Asterisk, gratitude grows. All returns. Even silence, once heavy, becomes a friend. Psychologists note that closeness at this level is not about constant openness. It is about authenticity. The person no longer plays roles, no longer wears masks, no longer splits themselves between who they are and who they think they must be. Intimacy becomes a state of alignment, living the same self on the inside and the outside. In psychology, they say that the fear of closeness, once healed, reveals a truth larger than love alone. Life itself is intimacy. To breathe fully, to connect deeply, to live authentically, this is closeness in its purest form. And when a person learns this, they no longer move through the world afraid of being seen. They move through the world grateful that they can be. In psychology, they say that overcoming the fear of closeness is not about becoming fearless. It is about learning that fear no longer has the final word. For years, a person may live caught in the push and pull between longing and avoidance, craving intimacy yet fleeing from it. The walls feel unshakable, the patterns unbreakable, the loneliness inevitable. But the journey of healing shows otherwise. What once felt like suffocation becomes safety, what once felt like danger becomes love, and what once felt like hiding becomes freedom. The final transformation comes when intimacy is no longer a battle, but a natural rhythm. The person no longer sees closeness as a threat to their independence or safety. It becomes a ground on which their truest self can stand. They discover that love does not erase them. It amplifies them. Connection does not weaken them. It strengthens them. To be seen does not destroy, it heals. Relationships, once fragile, become deeper than they ever imagined. The partner is not a risk to survive, but a presence to embrace. Trust, which once felt impossible, begins to flow naturally. Conversations that used to feel terrifying now feel liberating. Vulnerability, once equated with danger, now feels like courage. The self also transforms. For the first time, the person looks in the mirror and does not see a fracture being split between longing and fear. They see someone whole, someone worthy of love without conditions, someone capable of receiving and giving without hesitation. The critic that once whispered, "You are safer alone," grows quiet, replaced by the truth. Asterisk, you were never meant to hide. You were always meant to connect. Asterisk, even the world feels different. Strangers seem less threatening, relationships less heavy, silence less frightening. The person walks through life not armored, but open, not hiding, but participating. They learn that closeness is not a trap, but the very essence of being human, the thread that gives meaning to existence. In psychology, they say that when a person faces their fear of closeness, they do not simply learn to love others. They learn to love themselves. They learn to see intimacy not as a battlefield, but as a homecoming. And in that homecoming, they discover that what they feared all along was not closeness itself. It was a possibility of losing it. But when they finally allow themselves to embrace it, they realize true closeness can never truly be lost, because once it lives within, it shapes everything forever.